you can lay down Mr. Ray's conspiracy theory without any evidence at trial.
Cy, Ray, R-A-Y. Thanks, sir. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Will you tell us what you do?
I have a handful of different jobs, but primarily for my role here, I do a lot of consulting, analysis, and evaluating geolocation data as it pertains to mobile devices.
Let's talk about how you got to that place where you provide consultation on devices and geolocation.
Okay.
What background led you to this job?
I started with a law enforcement background. I started my law enforcement career in 1995 in Arizona. Started working with the first set of cell phone records in that capacity in 97, late 1997. There wasn't a lot of training. Obviously, cell phone technology and the use of that in criminal investigations was very new and novel at that time. So most of my early training came directly from the carriers. If I was working a case with Verizon or AT&T, I would work directly with Verizon or AT&T engineers to understand the records, what they meant, how to map them, how to interpret it. In 2000, I started a very small police department in Arizona. In 2000, I transferred to a much larger police department in the Phoenix area. When I made that transition, I took more of an investigative role. I was previously a patrol officer. That investigative role, I started with a DEA task force where I worked with drug narcotic interdictions, and the primary role there was working with cell phone records. So I had some more training experience in that capacity. In 2001, late 2001, I left that position and I went into a full-time investigations position. I started with sex crimes and child crimes, again, using cell phone records and attending what training was available. Again, most of that is from the carriers directly. About 2004, I moved out of sex crimes and child crimes into persons crimes or violent crimes. So any type of a dangerous or violent crime against a person. Continuing to work with cell phone records and attending what training I could. In 2008, I was promoted to sergeant and I was immediately put into a homicide robbery sergeant's position where I stayed until 2010. Around 2004, I started doing a lot of work with cell site simulators, and that is a piece of equipment that allows you to physically go out in the field and find a mobile device. In a very brief summary, it's the ability to create a fake cell tower that is mobile, it's in a vehicle. And if I can analyze your phone records and determine a rough area that you're at, I can put this mobile platform in that area. Your phone will register to it, and I can physically track the phones. It's in the courtroom, it's in a bedroom, wherever it may be. In 2007, our agency purchased that equipment. So prior to that, I was working with other agencies looking for devices using it. 2007, we purchased our own equipment. That purchase also prompted more training. There was a company, it's owned by Boeing. They came in and I had 80 hours at that point specific to cellular network engineering, how to go out and actually conduct these surveys to understand how a particular cell phone network works in a particular area, and how to replicate, how to create a cell site that looks legitimate in that area. I worked with that company for a number of years in doing that, hundreds of hours worth of back and forth working, actually going out in the field and doing this. In 2010, I had an opportunity to go to Afghanistan as an advisor in charge of an undercover Afghan police team that targeted IED cells. And again, we would look at different types of technology that we could leverage in doing that. I came back in late 2010, early 2011, and went back to the police department. In 2012, our department created a position that this was a full-time position. Now that's all I did was track phones pretty much every day. Using cell site simulators, using phone records, whatever technology we could leverage. Because of the lack of training that was available when I was a younger officer, in 2007, I started a training company. At the time it was called Phoenix Training. And I created a training company to provide law enforcement training, specifically as it relates to cell phone records. I've been providing that training from 2007 up to about 2013 now. I was really frustrated with the lack of software and training available to law enforcement. It's very complex and clunky, for lack of a better term. So I began researching and teaching myself how to do some basic computer programming. And I wrote a program that I could take phone records from any carrier in the United States, and I could put it in this program, and it would immediately map hundreds, if not thousands of connections. It was pretty unique at the time. There just wasn't a lot of options out there that was doing the geolocation. There was a lot of analytics to who's calling who and how often they call that person. But specifically to put it on a map for detailed geolocation data, there was a big gap in the market. It worked. It worked really, really well. And at the time, because we were tracking phones in the field, it gave me this very unique opportunity where I could use a search warrant, get phone records, analyze the phone records, come up with a hypothesis that this phone is most likely Thursday at 2 a.m. going to be in this neighborhood. and then physically go to that location to recover the phone. And then I could evaluate, was I right? Was I wrong? Do I need to tweak something? Mid 2013, our agency was assisting a lot of other agencies because we had, for lack of a better term, we had progressed significantly on our ability to find the phones. I had a lot of agencies asking me for a copy of my mapping program, and I was just about at 20 years at that point. I realized maybe it's time to go do something else. So in May of 2014, I retired from the police department and I started a company called ZETX, ZETX. And we offered a couple different things. So we had the mapping program that I just described. Obviously, when I'm running it on my laptop, it can be a little clunky. It doesn't have to be perfect. When we started business, we actually hired computer engineers to come in and take what I had written and scale it to a national platform. So we offered the mapping services, which was both real time and historical. We took that original training class that I had built and we scaled it out. So we had a basic 40-hour that would just give you the nuts and bolts of how to look at phone records, what they need, what type of records to obtain. We also started a subject matter expert course. It was one of the first courses in the country where law enforcement could actually come in and become certified as subject matter experts in this field. Did some training courses as well that we created on drive testing, so the ability to go out and scan and monitor cellular networks. Because of those two features, my job duties changed dramatically, where I found myself consulting with law enforcement daily, sometimes multiple times in a day, on cases very similar to this case, where I would have a law enforcement agency that's using our product or has attended our training that would call me for some type of review or analysis. And I've lost count. It's thousands and thousands of cases. To put that in perspective for some just general numbers, I sold this company in 2021. At that time, around 2021, 2022, the system had mapped over 2 billion phone calls in the United States. We were seeing thousands of uploads a week. We had created this program in 2014 that if any law enforcement agency in the country called us because they had some type of crime, we would overnight them a drive test scanner, which gives them the ability to go out and do a forensic examination of cell tower networks. It was no cost. We ate all of the cost of this. So we paid for the scanners. Initially, we paid for the shipping. And the idea there is we wanted to create a national tower database that would have just a collection of drive tests. I want to say we have over 3 million towers in that database today that have been scanned or measured in some capacity. I'm unaware of any other database in the world like it. And we use that to feed the mapping platform to increase the accuracy of the mapping. Something that we did that was very unique with our company is we actually provided an estimated coverage area. So instead of just saying this phone connected to this cell site in the antenna points north, we would give the person doing the analysis a general idea of where that phone could possibly be within a radius. We were the only ones doing it when we did this. Since then, since 2014, more recently, since about 2020, pretty much the rest of the industry has adopted, if not the same standard, a very similar standard. So the company we were using to do the drive test data is a company by the name of Rode, ROHDE, and Schwarz, SCHWARZ. They're a German company out of Munich. They've adopted the way that we were doing some of the ranging. The FBI task team has adopted that, has actually brought that tower density is what is the general term for it, and it's now a feature in the CASBIZ program. So through the years with training, I've probably been involved in training 30, maybe 35,000 law enforcement officers from around the country. We had about 650 law enforcement agencies within the United States. At some point, all of the federal agencies have used our products in their training, and I've done quite a bit of consulting internationally as well. Towards the end of that period, we started working more with Rode and Schwarz. Rode and Schwarz decided that they wanted to look at the ability to implement a cell site simulator in the United States. They had one for Europe. They were considering doing it for the United States. So they sent me their first one for the United States, and I worked with their engineers for about a year, testing it, reviewing it, improving it. So another several hundred hours there. I've tried to figure out how many of these missions, if you will, of going out and finding a phone or looking at phone records, and it is literally thousands and thousands of hours at this point. I can't tell you specific number. That would be the background.
Sounds like your background is mostly in law enforcement, and then you moved into a specialty with cell phones, cell towers, drive testing, radio waves, all of that kind of thing.
That would be correct.
Through that and through the training of other officers to do this work and to use your program, have you testified as an expert in this field?
I have. If it's not 100 times, it's right there near it. Roughly 100 times in both state and federal courts.
And have you been qualified as an expert in state courts?
Yes.
In federal courts?
Yes.
How about Idaho?
Don't think I have in Idaho. I can't. I've consulted on a lot of cases in Idaho, but I don't think I've ever had testimony in Idaho.
This is your first time then?
I believe it is.
Generally, when you work, and I'm talking about when you've done your consulting work or worked with an agency to do what you do to review the records and to analyze the data, do you usually work with the defense?
This is the first time I've ever testified for this.
Fair to say you usually are a prosecution witness?
That is a very fair statement.
Well, here you are, and you're working with us in Mr. Koberger's case. What's your role in this case?
Trying to conduct an analysis of all of the geolocation data, at this point still focused primarily on Mr. Koberger's device, ultimately all devices, but any geolocation data, which is the ability to look at a specific area, whatever range or size that might be at a specific time, and put some type of accuracy and reliability to a phone's travel. Maybe it's static, when it's moving, when it's not moving, when it's off, it's on. Those type of things, but specifically as it relates to network, so the cellular network or a Wi-Fi network, I am not a forensic digital guy. I don't get into cell extractions. I'm not looking at the metadata on the phone. I'm looking at it very much as a network tool.
If I can make a rough distinction, you're not the person that's going to tell me who they called and which Facebook groups they might be a part of. You're not going to look at the data from the phone like the photographs, but you're going to tell me the places this phone went and how it was used while it went somewhere.
Kind of. Let me clean that up a little bit. I will look first at where I believe the phone went, where it traveled, how it got there, how long it took, possible routes. And then to your point, I call it cooperative data. I'm then going to seek out all that data you just talked about to say, okay, well, we have these 3 photographs, we have this piece of surveillance video, we have these 4 receipts. I'm going to overlay it with my analysis so that I can corroborate the analysis accurate, or maybe we see activity associated with that person and the phone's not there. Does that person just not have the phone, or is part of our analysis wrong? Maybe surveillance details wrong. We don't know. So eventually I will get back to that data you're talking about, but I'm not the guy that's going to go out and extract that data.
Would it be fair to say that that's data that you would use in a final analysis as it comes in from other sources, that you're the go-to for me to understand how a phone works with a tower and how it moves between towers if the phone's in motion somewhere?
Yes, 100%.
You talked a little bit about drive test data or drive testing and that being part of the company that you developed and part of the work that you've done. Is that helpful in understanding the ultimate picture?
Depending on the type of records we're dealing with, it can be very helpful. When we're looking at just basic call detail records, CDRs, a lot of times we're just getting connections to a particular cell site, and we can say a side of that cell site. Sometimes the frequencies that are used. Drive testing is really the only way to get a little bit more specific with where that phone may be. But more importantly, we can start to rule out areas we know it's not by drive testing. So just think of drive testing as a forensic evaluation of the actual cellular network in a particular area.
Fair enough. Are you familiar with AT&T records?
I am intimately familiar with AT&T records.
How long do you think you've been working with AT&T records?
28 years.
In our case that we're here on today, have you reviewed any AT&T records that relate to Mr. Koberger?
I have.
What have you reviewed?
What AT&T refers to as their regular CDRs, which is a report AU as an atom union. I have identified the report CT as in Charles Tom, which is the subscriber information. There's a really weird name called Locabor, which is AT&T's attempt to estimate general locations using latitude and longitude. I don't want to say GPS because it is different than GPS. I believe I've looked at some ping data from December. For the most part, that's what I've reviewed so far.
Have you looked at 2 separate AT&T warrant returns from December 23rd, 2022?
I have.
In your experience with working with AT&T records, is it common or uncommon to have 2 warrants, one that relies on the content of the first and that's the same day?
It's not uncommon to see a small time period that produces results that would increase the desire or the need for a bigger time period of records. Seeing that entire process happen twice in the same day is extremely rare.
Well, the first AT&T record, we called it today the 48-hour AT&T record of Brian's call detail record. If you were to take that and do an analysis on a call detail record, how long would that be?
Depends on the analysis. So I'll qualify that answer with looking at what was put into the second warrant that shows us at least parts of that analysis to include a route that was identified. To do it reliably and feel comfortable that I'm accurate, at least 3 hours. And that's if you know what you're doing and you have all the tools at your disposal. Arguably, you could spend half a day or more doing that very easily.
To do that, do you just take these records, printed copy, and know what's on there, or do you have to do something with those records?
You would have to use some type of a mapping platform software, and you would take the digital copy, which is typically a text file, you would import it into that program, which would then map everything. But if I'm going to use those results, search warrant affidavit, for example, there's a process that I'm going to go through to confirm the accuracy, because in theory, if I'm wrong, the entire linchpin of that case is now hinged on this affidavit that I wrote. So before I commit to swearing out to an affidavit, hey, this is what the phone is doing, X, Y, and Z, there's a further process of just mapping it to validate it. In this case, there's a lot of time distance measurements that need to be performed that can be extremely time consuming. There's some ulterior issues that come up with how that phone is interacting with other cell sites that needs to be analyzed. Again, saying that a very qualified, competent investigator spending half a day just coming up with that basic summary is very reasonable.
In that half a day, you would put that record into a computer program and a map would be produced?
Correct.
What other information besides that call detail record would you need to do this analysis?
In this case, I would want the call detail records. I would want the locabor, it's LOCABOR. And I would want the regional cell tower list from AT&T.
Does AT&T generally provide that regional cell tower list inside of its record that it produces pursuant to the search warrant?
No, I would actually say by policy, they do not. It's a very large file. It typically does not transmit very well to government email. So they would direct users of where they could go online and download.
And have you looked at this record, the 48-hour AT&T search warrant record, the return on that?
I have.
Did that include the regional tower list?
It did not.
Okay. So if you are doing this analysis, you put CDR records into a computer program, you put a regional tower list into the computer program, what does it produce?
The CDRs would show me cell sites that the phone connected to. In this case, even within 48 hours, there's hundreds of those cell sites. So it would take a while to really look at that. The regional cell site list would show me the cell towers that the phone's not interacting with, which can be just as important.
Does it spit out product to you, or does it create something that you can reference to write your next warrant?
Depending on which mapping platform you're using, they all create some type of a map that the person doing the analysis on can interact with, and they can change things, they can save things, they can create work product. Depending on that platform, that's saved in different types of maps, but yes, all of them would have some type of a mapping platform.
Okay. Would that be consistent with this past draft that we heard about earlier?
It's my opinion that Corporal Payne probably is misusing some terms there. I don't see any possibility of the FBI CAS team producing a CAS draft report on the 23rd. I think he's probably mistaken that he saw some type of CAS work product, which would be this map, before they export all those results into a report. So I believe that he probably saw some mapping through a mapping platform. It would really surprise me if there was a physical report. It would be completely out of character.
In that first AT&T report, did you, or request search warrant affidavit, did you see the request for advanced timing reports?
I did. It's in both search warrants.
Did you get a copy of that in either return?
I have not seen any timing data in this case.
In December of 2022, did AT&T have this advanced timing report?
They absolutely did.
Was it something that they could produce?
It absolutely was.
And in May of 2023, how's it different to May of 2023?
Prior to May of 2023, only certain agencies were receiving this timing report, the FBI being one of them. What was referenced earlier about the May 23 date, that is when AT&T started offering the same type of reports. It's a little different, but it's the basic timing report to the state and local law enforcement as well. But prior to that date, state and local law enforcement would have to leverage these reports through federal agencies that had access to them.
Let's talk about the return on the second AT&T warrant. Did that have the tower list, the regional tower list in it?
It did not.
Did it have call detail records?
It did.
What time span?
I believe it's from June 23rd of 2022. The historical was as of the date of December 23rd, but there was also a real-time pin register that was added that extended, I want to say, to the end of December, maybe very first of January.
What's a real-time pin register?
So the second search warrant asked for a couple of different things. Historical records going back to June 23rd to the current date, which was December 23rd. The second piece that was asked for is real-time data from the network, which is commonly referred to as a pin register, trap and trace. And it's the ability of law enforcement to monitor network connections in real time. So as that phone connects to the network for certain reasons, I can see those connections. It's not a wiretap. I can't hear anything. I can't see content, but I can tell the phone is connected to a particular cell tower. There's also what's referred to as ping data, and that's going to be AT&T's estimation of where the phone is at, and that's provided by latitude and longitude, and that comes in every 15 minutes.
What is the purpose of one of those devices?
I should probably clarify. The third thing was the authorization for a cell site simulator. So it was a combination of all of these. Just as a matter of policy, and I think pretty much every law enforcement agency in the world has adopted this if they can. To use the cell site simulator, you want to see a real-time feed of the phone. Otherwise, you're driving in circles where the phone may not be. So it gives law enforcement the ability to have a general understanding of where a phone is operating or functioning. And then I can use the cell site simulator to do it. There's a number of reasons an agency might do this. This search warrant actually says they were requesting this because they were trying to locate where Mr. Koberger was.
Going to the understanding what's happening right now, is that used so that you don't just know where the phone was 5 minutes ago, but you know where it is right now?
Within a time period, it's not a perfect system. There is a little bit of a delay and the information comes in intermittently. So it's not a real-time feed of giving constant evaluation where that phone is. But if you know what you're looking at and you've done it long enough, you get a pretty good idea.
I heard you say that this is to try to find out where Mr. Koberger is. In the information that supported this warrant, didn't they already know where Mr. Koberger was?
I reviewed a lot of documents that clearly state not only do they know where he was, they had a surveillance team with eyes on. So yes, it would be unusual for an agency to request this type of equipment. And I need to qualify that. This truck driving around is about $1 million. It's not something you just park in the garage at night. It's a very expensive resource. It's a very technical resource that requires a lot of training and skill to use properly. So typically when it's used, it is used for, hey, we don't know where this person is at and we need to find them. And to be very honest, I don't have an issue with that part. I've used it 1,000 times. It's a good tool. It's a great tool. However, if I know where a subject is and I'm physically watching him, it's probably disingenuous for me to get a search warrant justifying it that I need to find him.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Ballance, how are you employed?
I'm a supervisory special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
So is your proper title Agent Ballance?
That's fine.
Okay. Agent, how long have you worked as a special agent with the FBI?
Since June of 2016.
And where are you currently assigned?
So currently I'm assigned to the FBI's International Operation Division out of Washington, D.C.
Prior to being a special agent with the FBI, were you previously employed in law enforcement?
I served as a deputy U.S. Marshal for 9 years prior to being with the FBI.
And in your role in the FBI now, are you a member of a specialized unit within the FBI?
I am. I'm a member of our Cellular Analysis Survey Team, or CAST for short.
What kind of work does CAST do?
In the simplest terms, CAST is a group of about 70 to 80 special agents and task force officers that specialize in utilizing cell records from a provider to determine the general location of a phone at a specific date and time that might be of interest to an investigation.
And have you used those techniques successfully in the past?
Yes, I've used those techniques on hundreds of occasions to locate violent fugitives, to locate missing kids, missing persons, and really just a gamut of different investigations that the FBI conducts.
How long have you been a member of CAST?
Since October of 2019.
And how long have you been using cellular records in investigations?
So I've been using cellular records as a part of my investigations, both with the FBI and with the Marshal Service since 2007.
Do you assist other agencies with this type of cellular analysis?
I do. I regularly provide assistance to agencies, local, federal, and state throughout the country.
How do those investigators usually come to contact you?
So usually as a part of CAST, we also do a lot of training and presentations. So I could be contacted directly by someone that participated in one of those trainings, or law enforcement can reach out directly to our unit, and then cases could be assigned to me that way as well.